morning. How are you this morning? I hope good. This is Brighter Morning with Bhoe, and we are on MCTV, Multicultural TV, and UN 97.5 FM radio. Now, somebody told me yesterday that I generally mention the TV audience and I don't mention the radio audience. I want to say that the radio listeners are very important to us on UN 97.5 because I know that a lot of you listen as you go to work or as you are in your cars. Some of you listen at home on the radio because it's easier to walk around and listen to the radio than it is to keep your eyes glued on TV. So I want to tell you that you are very welcome and we're glad to have you on board, and that you can call in 609-6283, 609-6284. So you are free to call in and express a point of view or ask a question. If I can answer it, I will. If I can't, I will tell you so. And our TV viewers, you are very, very important. It's important for us to converse with you. It's important for you to call. It's important for us to get your feedback. Okay, so let us know, and we are on Facebook as well, besides on the various channels that we are on. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you very much for watching. We have two important guests this morning. Our first guest is Dr. Keeran Ward, and we'll be talking to him shortly. Keeran is a scientist, a researcher, a lecturer at the university, and we will talk about the very, very interesting and exciting and valuable work that he is doing. And later on in the program, in the second half, we will talk to Dr. Bhoe, who is the MP for Faizabad. And he, of course, is a medical doctor, and he has been chairman of the regional health capacity in South Trinidad, SWRHA. And so we will get his views on what's happening with COVID, what's happening in the health sector, and what's happening in health generally. Health has become, I think the representative of the Southern Command yesterday said that health has become a major national security issue. So we will explore those things. My colleague Shanil Al-Suran was just telling me that on the 7 o'clock news, she will indicate that the Piarco Airport has in fact been ranked number 1 in the Caribbean for cleanliness and sanitation and so on. I would think that that would be very, very good news. And I just mentioned it. She will have the details at 7. But it's good news because, I mean, people in this time want to be assured that wherever they are going, the place is clean, it is sanitized, it has been, it takes into account that you will have fairly large numbers of people coming through the airports, etc. So I think that that is good news for Trinidad and Tobago. Wherever we can highlight good news, we will do that, and wherever there's bad news, we will not ignore it. So it's important to keep the country aware and alert and honest, and it's important to get different points of view, different sides of a coin, so to speak, and to hear the different perspective. You know, I listened to President Joe Biden yesterday talking, and he said a lot of things. He was talking about the infrastructure bill. And I think yesterday I made a mistake and I said $1.2 billion, but it is $1.2 trillion. The word trillion is so big in terms of conception that I said billion. yesterday, but it's $1.2 trillion for the infrastructure bill. But the point I'm going to make, or I want to make, is not about that. It is about the fact that he said, that in order to get his bill passed, which has now passed the Senate, and a number of Republican senators voted for it, who said that at the beginning that they would not vote for it. He said the following, and I'm summarizing, I can't remember the exact words, but he said, you have to talk to people. He said, and most importantly, you have to listen. And you have to expose people to different points of view and different ways of seeing. All right? And I want to say that that is the essence of democratic discourse. That is why people are able to engage with one another. And that is why you can have a point of view and change your mind, because you are open to other ideas and you are open to persuasion. And you are not wedded to your point of view as if it were the only point of view. And I want to say that that is important. And I think that in Trinidad and Tobago, we have to get away from the extremities of, what can I say, ideological impositions. And we have to get away from the point of view that the other person is not worth listening to. We've got to listen to people, man. That's what a democracy is. And, the media is an important institution. And any good media, what it does, it reflects a nation talking to itself. And that way you get the multivarious points of view. And it is then up to the individual to make sense of that and to pick out sense from nonsense and to come to a position of their own. You cannot have a situation in which you are only subject to one point of view or to advocacy for a point of view only, and you rigidly stick to that position. Open your minds and give yourself a chance to think, and to think for yourselves, and to think things through. It's an important gift that has been given to you by God, and you should allow your minds to be open like that to the things that are important. Okay? So, it's very nice to be with you this morning on U97.5 FM. You notice I mentioned the radio station first. And it's beautiful to be with you, my television audience on MCTV this morning. We value every one of you. We want you to call 609-6283, 609-6284. And from next week, I'm going to put aside about 15 minutes dedicated to calls. So you can look for that time when we will begin to take calls, and we are going to dedicate about 15 or 20 minutes to calls when you can express your view and call and give your point of view or ask a question. Okay, we value you and we want you to be part of what we're doing. So let us go on now to our guest this morning, our first guest, Dr. Keeran Ward. He is a young man, relatively young man, teaches at the University of the West Indies, does research, and we will hear what his research is about at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. So let us welcome him, Dr. Keeran Ward. Good morning, Dr. Ward. How are you?
I'm good. Morning.
Good to have you on. I'm sure everybody looking at you will know that I didn't say the wrong thing when I said he's a young man. And he's a young researcher and lecturer at the universities. You look very young, actually. When did you complete your PhD?
2016, about 5 years
2016,
ago.
so it's not so long ago. That's very good. So, and where did you complete it?
At Imperial College London in the UK.
And you had studied at UWI before?
Yes.
Yes,
I did
so
my
that
BSc at UE.
Could we take the volume up for Dr. Ward, please? It's very hard to hear him, and I'm sure listeners want to hear him and viewers want to hear him. Okay, so you studied at UWI, you studied at Imperial College, and what's your field of study?
Chemical engineering.
Okay, and what's your major thrust in research right now? What are you doing?
So my research considers circular economies.
Yes. Explain to viewers what a circular economy is, because not everybody will know. All right? And I would rather you explain it than I try to explain it.
Okay, sure. A circular economy is a way in which you could utilize material that you would once throw away and make it into something new, something of high value that can be reused.
Yes. Okay.
So it takes away from the traditional take, use, and throw away.
Yeah, what it does, it eliminates the element of waste.
Yes.
Is that correct? By basically a circular movement of materials or processes or things, it allows for utilization in a circle, so to speak, from one thing to another. Okay. All right.
Correct.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So what some of the work that we're actually looking at deals with the Sargassum issue that is currently affecting the Manzan Mayaro area of Trinidad and Tobago. And what we're doing is utilize the Sargassum to produce new products in a sustainable way, rather than just leaving it on the beach to rot and be discarded. It can actually be utilized to produce new products. So two of the products that we're actually looking at is a bioplastic alternative that can be used here in Trinidad for packaging, for bottling, etc., as well as using this Sargassum to treat water so that more potable water is available.
All right. Well, let's examine each one of those, because those are very, very important things. And the significant thing about what you're saying is that what you are trying to do is to take this Sargassum, and I'm very familiar with it because when I go to Mayaro, sometimes the shore is awash with the Sargassum, and it's not nice to walk through it. And it makes it uncomfortable because if it's in the ocean, it's hard to take a dip. These days we can't go in the ocean, but it's been there before, and I'm sure that it will be there after. The important thing about what you are saying, though, is that you can take this material, which would really become a problem, become trash, become something that makes the environment look unsavory, and you are going to turn that into a plastic. But more importantly, the plastic that you create out of it is going to be biodegradable. Is that what you are saying?
Yes.
All right. So explain as much as you can what you are willing to say about it, because I know that there are intellectual property issues and patent issues that are involved here. So I won't cause a problem there, because it's something we want to protect for you and for the university. Go ahead.
Okay, so the plastic is made from the sargassum. So what we basically do is treat the sargassum that we get on the shoreline and basically extract from it these chemicals, which are called polymers. From there, we find a way to transform those polymers into a film, which can then be fabricated into plastic. It's very, very interesting because some of the plastic we're getting actually looks and feels like the plastic that is currently being used on the market. Like when you go to the grocery and you pick up a plastic bag, or if you go and you pick up a piece of packaging that has plastic in it, the plastic that we're making out of the sargassum is very similar. So, and one of the major things about it is that if you do leave it in the environment, it will break down and contribute to the soil and allow for growth, which is part of that whole biodegradation system, rather than just be throwing plastic into the bin and then it ends up in the landfill and then it breaks down and it becomes an environmental burden. Our plastic is actually going to be able to be beneficial in a circular way.
Okay, that is really wonderful news and very creative work by you and your other researchers at the University of the West Indies. Now these are natural polymers that you get from this sargassum, right? So that's the first real achievement, not so?
Yes, correct.
So you get natural polymers from the sargassum, which can be, very, it can be bad, it's sore for the eyesight, really, on the ocean, but you get these natural polymers out of it, and you are then able to make this plastic. And I had a Professor John Agard here some time ago, and he made reference to the work that you're doing. And he said another important thing about what you're doing is that the plastic itself could, for instance, be reused in the process of agricultural production, that is to say with plants. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Okay, so the plastic itself, once it goes into the soil, it's going to degrade. So what happens
that is the plastic you are creating, not plastic that we have now, because the problem we have with plastics now is that we don't know what to do with them. They are all over the ocean, they are all over the landfills, they are all over the place as litter, and we are trying very hard to separate plastics from other things that are garbage or trash, to see if we can recycle that plastic and do something with it. Now, some companies have developed the capacity for taking the existing plastic, breaking it up, and reusing the same plastic to create new plastic. But what you are talking about is a circular process by which you get the polymers out of the sargassum. You create the plastic, which is equivalent in quality and capacity to existing plastic, and then becomes biodegradable, so it can go back into the soil, it can go back into the environment without hurting the environment, but more significantly, it can become a value to planting of crops and planting of gardens, etc. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes,
Okay.
that's perfect.
Well, first of all, I have to commend you on kind of thinking through something like that within the context of the circular economy to make it possible. And I have to commend you for going to something that is so wasteful and is so unattractive and creating value and opportunity out of it. All right? I mean, this is really a major achievement for you and the university. And you're a young man. I know that this is perhaps one out of many to come because you have so much potential and you are very well trained and you are a thorough researcher. And I want to commend you on the work that you're doing. But tell me about Sargassum now and water, because you are talking about the capacity to expand the availability of potable water. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So explain to me what happens with that.
So Sargassum in itself has a very interesting quality. The polymers are actually able to kind of extract and pull out heavy metal ions and other pollutants that are in water. And by doing so, it leaves behind a cleaner water product. So we have actually taken that knowledge and created a sort of prototype that's able to clean the water of some of these minerals, some of these heavy metal ions and precious metals by contacting it with the same polymers that we use for the bioplastic. So it's actually able to kind of take it out of the polluted water, so it leaves behind fresh water, clean water.
Okay. So give me a practical example. I mean, I understand the concept, and most people will understand the concept. You have polluted water, and you use the elements of the sargassum to turn it from polluted water to clean water. And that becomes potable water, and it's then usable, it's drinkable. Is that correct?
Yes, depending on the level of the pollution, the water may still have to go through another separation system. But what the sargassum does is it creates a cheap alternative for pre-treatment with water. So generally with water, there's a lot of synthetic resins, a lot of filters that are fairly synthetic and require a heavy amount of fossil fuels to create. What we are trying to do is to replace that with something that's more environmentally friendly that we could create out of the sargassum that can actually aid that process in being a bit more efficient in extracting those ions.
As I was saying before, and you clarified through your explanation, people will understand the concept of taking polluted water, making it cleaner, making it better, etc. But give me a practical example of how this could make a difference in the life of a population. It might be a small population, maybe a village or a community or something. But give me an example of how this can make a difference in the life of human beings.
Okay, for instance, maybe polluted water that comes from the landfill, for instance, or even from the river, like, water that ends up in the river. If it have a lot of silt, it has a lot of iron.
And this is Trinidad and Tobago we are talking about.
Yeah. So let's say we have water like that. This prototype can be used directly at the point source. It doesn't need extra utilities or anything like that.
Okay.
So the water contacts the prototype, and immediately you get a cleaner water sample that you can actually use potably. So the application can be anywhere that there's polluted water. You can put this prototype there, and it uses the natural conditions. So you don't need extra energy, you don't need electricity, you don't need power. It works at ambient conditions, like it works naturally. So once the water flows across
You don't even
the,
you don't even need to collect the water separately. You can clean the water before it flows. Is that correct?
so as the water comes into the environment, it can be
Yes.
treated at that point source.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to go to a waste treatment plant, for instance,
Yes, okay.
like what WASA would probably have to treat water.
Okay, you
It could
also
actually go through this prototype and get significantly clean before it goes somewhere else.
you all talking to Wassa about this?
We have engaged
Yeah,
them.
okay, so there's some collaboration going on to try to understand how it could be brought into the system, right?
Yes.
Because, and that would add, I mean, literally millions of gallons of water in availability
Oh, that,
to the Wassa catchment, won't it?
yeah.
Okay.
It would help. It would help make their water treatment operations more efficient.
Yes, more
So there's a
efficient.
higher availability of water coming on to the national community.
All right. Well, again, I want to commend you on the kind of work that you're doing. You know, a lot of times when people hear about the university, I was talking to Professor Prakash Prasad yesterday from UTT, and they are also doing, he gave two examples of people doing work that will make a difference in the society. One in terms of irrigation strategy using artificial intelligence, and the other one having to do with, what was the other one? Yeah, what was he telling me about? One was the artificial intelligence, and he was telling me about another matter which was really quite significant. I'll recall it in a minute. But here you are again using this sargassum, which is waste material, and you are really making a difference in water, which is the basis of all life, and water scarcity is a factor all over the world. And therefore, it has world applicability. And then you are dealing with the matter also of the plastic and the biodegradable plastic and its circular use in the process involving agriculture, etc. And these are very, very significant things, you know, and I want to commend you, and I want the population to understand that the investment by government on behalf of society in research, all right, is not a charity intervention. It is an intervention to make knowledge possible. And as long as that knowledge is aligned with problem identification and the solution of problems for people, it makes a huge difference, because everything in the world today are dependent, I mean, there are many things are dependent on, but two critical things are knowledge. You cannot do anything without knowledge. And knowledge is dependent on research. That's how you get new knowledge that you didn't have before. And more than that, it's dependent on applications. And many times the applications require technological know-how and technological capacity as well. All right, as well, in addition to scientific knowledge. So I want to share that, and that is how the knowledge works, and that is how our society needs to see how its money is spent to create value, because something like this creates value not just for today or for a year, it creates value sustainably. All right, is there anything that you're working on, that you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
We are doing a bunch of things in energy. We're looking at ways in which we can apply a circular system within the energy sector and also within the power sector by trying to consider what decisions can be made that could augment to sustainable development using the same engineering principles that I have talked about before, trying to create an efficient, a resource efficient, and an energy efficient process that can aid sustainable development, can aid us actually moving forward sustainably in the future.
Yeah, okay. And how far have you gotten with that?
Quite far. We have quite a big group of PhD students, MSc students, associate professionals, OJTs at the department that are all working together on projects like this. We've started it about maybe 3 years ago, and we're actually starting to put together national significance in terms of the projects that can be well adapted today. So it's going well. It's not to the level as the plastics and the water treatment work that we're doing with Sargassum, but it's coming.
Yes,
It's
okay.
coming.
All right, very well. Have you written papers on these things, or do you need to wait for the intellectual property matters to be settled before you write? I'm talking about the Sargassum-related research, yeah.
So we do have some papers that are on the upstream processes, like extracting the polymers, making films, those kind of things. We've published that internationally. My group has published that quite a bit. With respect to the actual plastic, not really. There was an article by Loop.tt a couple of years ago where we did showcase some of the work that we were doing.
Yes.
As of now, we're starting to finish up some of the optimization that we're doing with the plastic. That means just trying to make sure that it fits the market, it's fit for purpose, and we're doing some last minute testing on it. So once that is finished, it will go for IP, and then after that, we'll be able to publish it in the public domain.
Sure. And what about the water?
Same, both projects.
No, by the way, I just remembered what it was with Professor. He was talking about diabetes research, a major breakthrough that somebody had made, and they had actually filed for patent. And they were testing some of this stuff. They were doing collaborative work with institutions in India. Now, diabetes is such a big thing in the world, and it's like a scourge everywhere, but it's particularly problematic in the Caribbean. I remember when I was principal, one of the faculty members brought to my attention a piece of research that had been done in Barbados, and it indicated that diabetes had led to the amputation of legs of significant numbers of people in Barbados. In proportion to the population size, it was very significant. But the more significant finding that they got was that most Barbadians whose leg or legs were amputated did not live for more than 10 years. That most of them died within a 10-year period, many of them about 5 years later, which, I mean, is a hell of a thing. It's not just that you lose your leg, but you die, you know. And if we could deal with this issue of diabetes, we would have a real breakthrough here. But let's get back to your work now. And now, I want people to understand how this knowledge process works, you know, because we talk about it, we talk about the knowledge economy, and we talk about universities and teaching and learning and so on, but people don't really understand what is involved, and ignorance is a hell of a thing. When you don't understand something, You make all kinds of wild statements about things, and they have no relation to the reality. But you get away with it in a society that does not know. And when you talked about the research, you talked about a group, right? You talked about collaborators. You talked about people working together. You talked about PhD students below you under supervision. You talked about other collaborators like yourself who are seasoned researchers. You talked about OJTs. You talked. What does it take? I want you to focus on two things. What does it take in terms of collaboration to make something happen? And secondly, how important is interdisciplinary work or multidisciplinarity in the research process to get you the kind of creative results that you are seeking?
Okay, so in terms of the collaborations, research is not just a process that only one person can do. It's simply because once you have an idea and you kind of link it to an application or to a solution, what you find is the scope of the work becomes very large, right? It becomes very methodological, very iterative, because you need to do a lot of trials to try to see what works. So when you have more than one person, especially other researchers that are, experts in different areas, you actually see the research starting to come to fruition. It actually starts to form very well. And a classic example with our research is that as chemical engineers, we understand processes. We understand how to take materials and transform them into products. But what we don't understand is, the biological systems, like how does the biological material in the sargassum influence our product? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? We also don't understand too much about material science, looking at specific levels within the material that can either make it worse or make it better. So when you have collaborative experts that are interdisciplinary, the material sciences, the biological sciences, chemistry, because we have a lot of collaborators in chemistry as well, that kind of help us understand this material and this polymer and how it works, the research tends to come together better. So ideally, research cannot be done with just one person. And if it is, the research tends to be not high level and not as impactful as it is when you bring in collaborative experts. And really forming a team helps, because it helps in the knowledge that you spoke about before. Being able to share knowledge, like between myself and the students that are working on the project, it helps disseminate it. So not only do they grow, but they also understand research. And then they can go out and form their own research groups at some point in time and work on projects that can be largely major for the country by thinking about research in this way. So collaborations are very important to put forward research and to bring a solution forward to the market, and also to help in knowledge dissemination, like disseminating that knowledge from one expert to another. In terms of the value of the research and the impact of it, it really comes with a zeal for research, which I think stems from the academic training that you do get at the university, but it also comes with dedication. So I think for a lot of people within the community in Trinidad, research seems to be a dead end. It seems to be something that people are just doing rather than actually seeing the significant impact or benefits of it, because everything we have stems from research, right? The computer that you have would have gone through many years of R&D, research and development, the desk that you have, the chair that you have, etc. So funding is needed to drive that, right? And to move further to a solution. And I think once, the higher levels in the community, like corporate levels, etc., realize the impact of research and what it can do, then funding allows for that research to grow. And I think that is a major element that is missing in the local context of research, being able to get the funding opportunities to do really, really good, impactful research. So collaborations are one thing, but funding has to be something that would allow researchers to do the work as well, in terms of the impact.
I just want to, I talked about the multidisciplinary nature of the work, the interdisciplinary collaboration, and I talked about the issue of collaboration, and you elaborated this in your own context. I just want to make the point, and by asking you a question, do you also collaborate in the work that you are doing here now internationally?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yes. So you build a whole pool of people here at different levels, all right? So you have striations of people here involved in the research work, and then across the world, you have other institutions in which you have the same thing there, and you all are collaborating in that way. All right. So you get the benefit of other institutional knowledge. And what you are really doing there is that you are building a knowledge system locally, and because it involves generational work and different levels of expertise and students who are coming in the system, you are really building a sustainable knowledge system if you have the funding to keep it going.
That's
and
correct.
You are also building a sustainable international collaborative system of mutual support because of your international collaboration. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that is how ideas work, and that is how ideas move. And because you have that kind of pool, circular pools around each other, they make a difference in terms of what is the benefit to human beings and societies.
Yes.
I think it's important for people to understand that knowledge is not an esoteric thing. It's not divorced from the life that we live. Research is not an abstract thing that people do their PhDs on. Yes, they do their PhDs, but they are also part of something larger. And then they come back into society and they do other things depending on what is their profession. So I want to thank you for that. But Dr. Ward, I want to get to what to me is a very sad part. I hear you going to be off and away and not in Trinidad anymore. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think for me, the decision to leave has been one that I have been sort of fighting with. I think because I've been back for about 5 years, and I think I've contributed quite a lot in that time. But to me, in order to grow, especially grow as an academic and grow in research, you always need to step out of your comfort zone. There's so much more that you can do once you learn, more within the area. So for me, I think I have really grown quite a lot here, and there's so much more that I can do, once I step out of that. So my decision to go out of that comfort zone and to leave and try to promote my research is really driven by continuous professional development. And I've been given some really good opportunities to do that. But it comes with hard work. It comes with, working over the last 5 years to build a research system, build a research group, and to put our work into the international community and see it being, really taken as key and important. So that kind of drives the nature to promote the research and to grow and develop even more. And I think I can do that once I step out of that comfort zone, so to speak, which is in Trinidad. So I think I will be able to grow more. And obviously, want to grow more, there's so much more that I can do for Trinidad in the future as well.
I have no doubt that you will, but I want to say this again to the people who are watching and listening. I want to say that, talent is everywhere, but certain kinds of talent are not abundant. It is scarce. And when people are talented, they become attractors for the world, a world that is looking for talent in order to regenerate itself and to create new things and so on. And unless you can provide the nurturing environment in a society that allows talent to flourish and to do things that keeps it going in its own mind in a sustainable way, we are going to lose a lot of our talent, and that is the problem of small societies. I remember talking to V.S. Naipaul about this, and he told me how difficult it was for a small society to retain its talent because the opportunities are always elsewhere. And I want to say that to the people who matter so that they listen and understand. We cannot continue without recognizing that we've got to create the basis for the nurturing and the retention of talent in this country, and that even when they go away, we keep the collaborative opportunity open and available. So, Dr. Ward, I want to thank you so much. You have been such a refreshing presence and voice here this morning. I want to thank you for this simple way in which you have explained very, very complex issues, and in which you have suggested what the value of these things might be to ordinary people in society, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but everywhere, but certainly of value here. And I wish you well in all your endeavors. I will see if I can get you to come back before you leave our shores. And when you go away, I will keep in touch with you and find out what you're doing so that we can talk again. So thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. And you viewers and listeners, thank you so much for being part of this. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a knowledge experience to talk with Dr. Keeran Ward. And we move on now to the news at 7 with Chenille Alsuran.